Hey all, Alex here at your home of the Music Deep Dive, and today it is time for a review of the 2018 book by Judith Chernaik, Schumann, The Faces and the Masks. Judith Chernaik, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing her name incorrectly, I could not find a pronunciation of it online. Judith is a New York-born poet, graduate from Cornell, got her doctorate at Yale, who relocated to London in the early 1970s and has lived there pretty much ever since. Her background in general is in the study of romantic history, which is kind of a common thread for a lot of the authors that have been writing these nonfiction books that I've been reviewing recently. Um, Specifically, I think Judith's background is more in how Romanticism really manifested itself in poetry and in music. She has written nonfiction works on a few different people, as well as a couple of novels that are actually based off the lives of Percy Shelley and his immediate family, based off some letters and existing correspondence that remains. She also co-founded the organization Poems on the Underground in 1986, which collaborates with the London Underground rail system to post poetry on the walls of trains several times a year. It's an ongoing thing, which is really cool. Impressive credentials overall. Robert Schumann needs probably little introduction. German composer, most well known for his piano compositions. He was a pianist by trade, was intending to be a virtuoso until a hand injury and just, I think, a general lack of ability to keep up with the increasing amount of maestros, virtuosos that were coming around at that time. You got to remember, this is the period of time where Liszt was starting to emerge. His eventual wife, Clara Schumann, was very popular. Robert couldn't quite keep up with these people, so he switched his focus to composing and was all the better for it. A lot of his piano compositions serve as character pieces. They're very kind of inventive little pieces for the period. He was also a pioneering music critic, penning some of the most progressive critical works that Western art music had seen during that time, thanks in large part to his creative, literal usage of two proxies for himself, these two different characters of Florestan and Eusebius, that kind of butt heads and also kind of collaborate with each other to present this interesting framing to music criticism that you did not really see at that time. And because of that, Schumann really sort of stands out compared to the crowd in that sense. He also suffered from severe mental health issues, the cause of which we now know to be syphilis, and spent the last 2 years of his life institutionalized. So, this book, I mean, clearly there is a lot to grapple with the life of Robert Schumann. I already talked about his wife Clara in my last video. And Judith does a really laudable job at taking such a massive subject and making it very, very accessible. Compared to the Clara Schumann biography by Nancy Reich, compared even to the two Mendelssohn biographies, the Felix Mendelssohn and the Fanny Hensel biographies by R. Larry Todd. All of those are really framed from an academic lens. This Schumann biography is very much a popular biography. That is the intention. She states as much in the introduction. It is intended to be for someone who has minimal exposure to the world of classical music, which is totally fine. And I think that approach is very valuable overall. And what I will say, which is why to me, out of these kind of series of biographies that I've been reviewing over the last couple of weeks or so, this is the only one that I'm not like super crazy about overall. From an information standpoint, it certainly is less dense than the stuff that you have before it. And yet, I find myself being the most willing to recommend this for the average person, for someone who might be watching this video and who has minimal musical background, because I think this is the most geared towards that specific frame of reference. There's a lot of information. It doesn't really skip past anything. It just doesn't really go in depth. It touches on events. It touches on pieces. You get kind of Judith playing the role of music critic a little bit, which is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, but I don't think she is as liberal about it as other biographies that I've read, so it's fine. So because of that accessibility and trying to limit her getting into the weeds, we don't really go super in depth on any of the pieces. We kind of breeze through the history from birth to death. It's interesting. I was a little bit surprised that Clara didn't get as much focus as I was expecting in this narrative, especially considering this is a very recent book. We are very much in the midst of a Clara Schumann reappraisal, revival, if you will. And I feel like Clara is very much kind of in the background compared to Robert in this narrative. But I think it serves its purpose well. And I think that for any of you out there who are looking for an entry point into Robert's music, or into his life in general, if you're already somewhat familiar with his music, this is a good pick. I will say one thing. I've seen people praise the prose of this book as being kind of a novelist's prose, shall you say, because that is the author's background. I wasn't blown away by it, but again, I think that's because the language is meant to be more populist, more accessible. It's not necessarily breaking down barriers or doing anything out of the ordinary. I think it is very straightforward, straight to the point, and there's a lot of value in that. So I would recommend it. I would recommend it probably more for the average casual music listener than most of the other music books I've reviewed on this channel. If you already have a lot of background with Schumann, if you already heard most of his pieces and are somewhat familiar with his life, this probably won't enlighten you too much, but it is still a good book. I would not want to dissuade anybody from reading it. Just make sure you understand what you're getting into, should you choose to proceed. So with that said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, more reviews are to come. Hit that bell for notifications and tell a friend as well. Appreciate you all. Thanks so much. I will see you next time right here at your home of the Music Deep Dive.